Okay, so this is a commentary on Genesis in response to Grant Reedy on my Facebook page, Frank Petrucci. And he wants to know what I have to say about Genesis, and I invite him to tell me what he has to say about Genesis. I have Genesis hanging out right here on my phone. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. God created form and matter. Matter is the capacity, the pure potency to receive something. Form is what actualizes matter into diverse species of things. You know, whether you're talking about a star or a rabbit or a human, or even what we're about to get to. When God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, that is talking about the angelic intellect. Remember that the literal interpretation of the Bible is what the words, what reality the words represent. If you read St. Augustine's literal commentary on Genesis, he will explain that to you. He will explain to you three things, because this interpretation might sound a little bit arcane. One is that you cannot interpret the Bible contrary to science, otherwise you become the ridicule of unbelievers. Two, that what I just told you, the literal meaning, is not the litera of the words, but rather the realities that the words represent. So, if the word light there represents the angels directly, that's not a metaphor, that is the literal meaning. It's what the author, Moses, intended by the word light. See, when he was giving this speech to the Israelites, he had to talk in a more childlike way, in the language he used. You know, he's not going to refer to angels as intellectual substances. If I said separate substances, would you know I was talking about angels? Okay, so he said, "Let there be light." Let there be light. Let there be the angels. Light always refers to knowledge. And Augustine, the third thing is that if you read Augustine's literal commentary on Genesis, he comes to the same conclusion. That's where I got this from. Hello? Augustine says that "let there be light" refers to the angels. Okay? I agree. Okay? Augustine was wrong about some things too, by the way. I'm not just saying, hey, listen to Augustine. I'm just trying not to commit plagiarism, you know. It's not my idea. Novelty is a red flag in theology. You should be able to quote something. Now, God saw the light was good. The angels. Now, if the light was good, the angels are good, right? And we know what happened in heaven when Lucifer rebelled and took a third of the bad angels with him. How did that happen? Well, St. Thomas Aquinas in the Summa Theologica explains the difference between morning knowledge and evening knowledge. And morning knowledge is the good angels took what God gave him, all those forms and ideas, and he looked in the mirror and saw how awesome he was, but you know what? Thanks be to God, because you're the one that made me that way. The bad angels did everything the same, except they forgot to give thanks to God, or rather, they were too self-absorbed and didn't, forget might be a good analogous word, although an angel can't forget. An angel knew what it was doing. And their sin was a bit more serious than that. But those are the evening knowledge angels. And that's why God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And before that, though, he separated the light from the darkness. He separated the good angels from the bad angels. You know, Michael the archangel threw the devil into hell. And that was day one. Now, these days are not 24-hour time periods. If you look at the original Hebrew, it means ages of ages. So whenever there's a new day, God is introducing something new into existence. If not actually, then potentially, as we'll see later on with the plants. So then when God creates the firmament and calls the firmament heaven, so then God's basically, that's the Big Bang there. That's the universe, the galaxies, the stars, all that. Then we get into this troublesome verse about the plants. That let the earth, matter, whatever. Let the universe put forth the vegetation. Well, how could that be? He didn't even create the sun yet. He didn't create the earth yet. So, how would the Israelites understand this? We can't really bend the interpretation too much. So what it must mean is that God gave the earth the ability to produce plants, potentially at that point. In other words, the principle was within the earth to put forth vegetation. It still needed the sun to actually put forth vegetation, but God put into existence whatever molecules, whatever atoms, whatever blueprint was necessary so that plants could evolve into existence. Yes, I believe in evolution. I think it's not against the Catholic Church, and I'm Catholic, so. All right, now, next is, God saw that this was good, and this was the third day. Now, the fourth day is where the lights of the heavens to separate the day from the night. So this is when the stars become ordered. So if you could picture the Big Bang and everything settling, there's no real order yet. The sun had to take form and stuff like that. Everything had to be settled, and that's what this is. And we're talking about the sun and moon in verse 16. And in the verse 17, the heavens give light upon the earth. That's their purpose. Now this also has a metaphorical meaning also, that the higher angels inform the lower angels inform us. And we inform those below us. We take care of the earth, the animals, plants, stuff like that. So he saw it was good and created a fourth, but this is now the fifth day. Now there's swarms of living creatures, birds, sea monsters, all sorts of animals. These are irrational animals. So this is a new day. Before there were no animals in existence. It seems like God had to create animals. Like that animals did not come from plants, maybe, is what we're reading here. Maybe. It could also just be saying that animals came into existence at that point, next, while being ambiguous about how. Because it says, God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures. It doesn't say he created them ex nihilo. Let earth bring forth living creatures. Doesn't that sort of tie in with abiogenesis, or with the medievals called spontaneous generation? It's funny because a lot of followers of St. Thomas want to deny abiogenesis, but St. Thomas himself believed in spontaneous generation, which is basically the same thing, just not as science-y. So then, this is where God makes man on day number 6. That's why 666 stands for man. And that's where this whole chapter, God gives man dominion over the earth. Now, in modern times, in the 1900s, a lot of clever people use this verse to basically say, all right, well, if God gave us dominion over the earth, then we could do whatever we want with it, But that's not what's meant. God wants us to take responsibility for the good of the earth, all right, and not abuse it, not abuse our freedom. So, moving on quickly here, and I know I'm not reading all of the words, but you could pull up the Bible yourself, follow along with me. I'm now on chapter 2. Now, day 7, God rested. But what does it mean for God to rest, anyway? Because we're taught that God is always at rest. God doesn't change. He is at rest, but yet he is pure act. And Jesus even says, my Father's still working till today. So what does it mean? What it means when it says God rested is that he didn't bring anything new into creation anymore. That was it. That was the end. That's why when we talk about Jesus, sometimes we refer to that as day 8. Because Jesus is sort of this new creation insofar as God's relationship to humanity has changed, in the sense that God has now raised humanity to himself. So, then we have, of course, another account. But we're not going to get into a second account. Now we're going to talk about Eve, though. So this is skipping all the way down to chapter 2, verse 18, where Eve was taken from Adam's rib to denote the equality of man and woman. That is, their equal in dignity. In other words, she was not taken from man's head or man's feet. She was taken from man's side as being equal. But now the dynamics of Adam and Eve fit Theology of the Body by John Paul II is an entire book, a series of lectures just on the interaction of Adam and Eve. There is so much that can be said about Adam and Eve. The whole answer to today's modern crisis of sexuality could be solved with Adam and Eve. But I'm not going to get into Adam and Eve right now. I'm just going to leave this for part 1, which is the 7 days. And then there might be a part 2 to this where I talk about Adam and Eve.